again, everybody, or perhaps hi for the first time if it's your first time. You catch me today on the way to Holdsworth House, which I'll pop on the map here, north of Halifax, between Halifax and Bradford. It's a Jacobean manor house with a very storied history and a change of direction in the 60s through to now. The date of the current building dates back to 1633, which is technically just after the Jacobean era. Those of you who were getting A star in history will know that James I succeeded from Elizabeth I in 1603. Those of you who are lit buffs, if you know your Shakespeare, might very likely refer to the Renaissance playwright as Elizabethan, and that's right for his early plays, but in the latter part of his career, they would have been Jacobean. When James acceded to the throne in 1603, I believe his reign was through to 1625. Now, perhaps this Jacobean manor was built by that point, I'm not sure. There is a 1633 date above the door, which to my mind is technically Caroline era, but it's a quibble, who cares? The site actually dates back with records showing a building on site all the way back in 1272, and was privately owned by a number of figures throughout history until it was purchased by the current family who own it in 1962, the Pearsons. And it remains in their hands to this day. They purchased in 1962, renovated and opened a country club and hotel thereafter in 1963, with guests in the 60s, including the Beatles. And it was renovated in part, the stone gazebo, in the years leading up to the pandemic with the help of the National Trust. The couple who bought it in the 60s passed it on to their daughters, who still run it as a hotel, events venue and wedding venue to this day. I'm not going to take you through my plans. Like last time, I'm going to be looking at beautiful spots where you might make use of light. It has a wonderful garden and facade that would be brilliant for outdoor shots, some lovely cosy ceremony spaces, and lots of deep stone mullioned windows that I would think would make for really dramatic portraiture. So I won't bore you with design ideas and things like that now. I'll wait until we're doing it in real time once we get there.
And I've been waiting for your hunger. And I've been waiting for you. And I've been waiting for your sorrow to land on me. And I've been waiting for the future. And I've been waiting for us. And I've been wishing for your laughter to land on me. Lay your trust, your burden. Lay your hope on me. Take this love that I got. If you want it. And I've been waiting for a reason. And when you came into my life, you were the one. And I'll be holding on forever, or as long as you want me to. Lay your trust, your burden.
So this wall of the property is actually east facing. You might want to consider placing yourselves here for some portraiture, facing the other way, so that you've got the west facing light of sunset behind you. And if you were facing in this direction, then you'd be flatteringly backlit. So for example, if you were doing some group portraiture here, or some group shots just more casually or candid in the evening, this wall is facing the east, the west is over my shoulder, and therefore you've got this kind of rim lighting, or what's known as hair lighting, and hopefully of a summer's evening the golden glow of the sunset, which is quite some hours away as yet. We're probably a couple of hours away. Sunset's probably likely to be 9:15 here, and we're only at about 6:30 now. But you can still see the kind of flattering haloing of light here that you might use for some fun portraiture of friends and family. In case that's disorientated you, I'm now sitting at the chairs and tables from the previous sequence, facing the pillared walkway that was in the previous clip, and that's acting as a natural reflector that's bouncing the sunlight from behind me onto my face, whilst at the same time, still with a relatively open camera aperture, I'm able to create that sun star across the side of my face through my glasses. Or you might alternatively go for the western sky behind me with the sunset light in it, creating a halo rim light in the manner that it is there around my shoulders and arm, and thus get some really lovely, warm, candid group shots that have a really lovely, warm glow to them.
Just let me hold you. Lay your hold on me. Take this love. And I've been wishing for your laughter to land on me. And as I lay your trust, your burden, lay your hope on me. Take this love that I got, baby. I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking? And I can't help but smile. Do you know how much I love you? You put my favorite song on. I put my feet up, and we just sing along. And I can't help.
So this is the outdoor space that you might well use for a ceremony. Not necessarily, but one of the main options.
This moment, can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. 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 I watch you as you sleep. You don't know I'm looking. With you everything's complete. Do you know how much I love you? I put your favorite song on just to wake you up. When I dance around, I can't help but feeling I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving.
We've got here where you might have your officiant taking you through your ceremony on the ceremony day, where you might have your aisle with your guests, featuring the building itself.
Forever, forever. I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? I'm loving this.
So, as an example of the sort of thing I've been talking about in regard to directions of light, you of course want some sort of portrait with this beautiful backdrop. Have a look at where the shadows are falling on the ground and where there's a boundary between the natural fall off of open shade versus direct sunlight, and to be staring directly into this might not be the most flattering, might even be a bit of a squinty portrait, versus turning yourself around for something beautifully backlit, which I'll demonstrate in a moment. So, for example, with this beautiful backdrop here, you could do several things. You might want a shallow depth of field to blur some of it out and get a beautiful portrait of you, but more likely here, you want that depth for the beautiful background. That said, the lighting probably isn't as flattering here as it might be in some other instances, which I'll show you shortly. Of course, you've invested in an absolutely beautiful setting and venue here, so you want some formal group portraits with this behind, shown in detail with deep depth of field. But thereafter, if we're thinking about utilising the best light for beautiful portraiture, note the direction of the natural shadows from the topiary, and if you can see where it's meeting at the red line with the sunlight on the paving, that's roughly within an inch or two where I'd place your toes so that you were beautifully backlit, and I'll show you the results hereafter. This happens to be a 50mm shot that isn't prioritising Holdsworth House behind for the purposes of what I'm trying to illustrate. But if we imagine I had a wider angle photograph here with that beautiful backdrop in mind, this time of day, clearly from this shot, isn't the time to be doing it. You can see here the really harsh, overexposed, ghostly, unflattering white light that's making me squint and is not flattering at all. This image is straight out of camera. In a moment you'll see here a bit of editing, but it's no great improvement. That's part of the expertise that you're investing in a professional photographer. They're not just snapping the shots on the day and then walking away. They're devoting hours, days, weeks into the editing to deliver a curated gallery to you too. But these two images serve as your example of what not to do facing people into bright light because you're after a particular composition. Read the light and make adjustments hereafter. Now cast your mind back to that red line that I drew on the pathway, and I am standing with my toes perhaps an inch or two behind that boundary between natural shadow and light, but I've turned around so that I am being backlit by the sun getting lower in the western sky, in the same direction as I showed you in the courtyard sitting down earlier in the video. Here you get an example of a shot that I have taken at aperture f-stop 4. Don't worry about that detail at all. It's relatively wide open to allow as much ingress of light as possible, but I'm breaking some technical rules by shooting into the light because it can lead to the risk of overexposure. Here, though, I hope you'll agree that compared with the prior two very ugly squinting faces, harsh overexposed light and harsh shadow against the nose, this, much more flattering, gives us a haloing of light around the hair and across the shoulders that has a much more beautiful depth and warm glow. The subject matter here is not particularly great. I can't go for the finer details of portraiture when I'm taking a self-portrait on a tripod, but hopefully it serves to illustrate the kind of thing that might make for some really intimate, beautiful portraiture rather than just quick snapshots. In these further examples hereafter, I've opened the aperture of the lens up still further, in this case to f1.8, but again, don't worry too much about that, to allow an even greater amount of light in at once. Now, people will have every subjective right to have the opinion that there are technical inaccuracies in doing this. Some people won't like the amount of flare that's being created here. They might find the flaring and haloing around my hairline to the right hand side of the image too much. Hopefully on the left hand side of the image, the more warm glow around my hair there is pleasing. If I had actually been doing this with a bride and groom, I wouldn't have angled it quite like this, because I'd have had more time to pay attention to the details and think about how it's perhaps not that flattering to have that glow of light coming through the ears. But if you like that quite angelic warm glow of the flare through the hair or across your heads, perhaps in an embrace or a kiss, then this can be really romantic.
This moment, can we stay here together? If I could stop the time, don't you know that I would? 'Cause I'm just loving this moment. Can we stay here forever? Forever. 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 I watch you as you drive. Do you know I'm looking?
Here's a spot where the bit of light from the mullioned windows might not be that immediately obvious, but if you can imagine the bride going down the stairs with her train flowing behind her, this could be a really elegant pocket of light just on that wall to catch the highlights of her white dress. So this might give you an idea of how you might use these deep stone mullioned windows to sculpt some light for quite dramatic portraiture too. If you're planning on a smaller, more intimate wedding party, here are some dressed smaller rooms for reception and wedding breakfast.
I would be up waiting for you if you had to leave. I would wait a lifetime.
So you might use the stairwell for a beautiful bridal veil from above, or potentially from below to use some of the lighting from the deep mullioned stone windows above. Not always thought of, but an angle that can be really flattering too.
I just wanna say that I feel that our love is real. Maybe we should hurry up and seal the deal. Forever.